Hey everyone, my name is Lynn and I'm a certified personal and spiritual life coach. Lately, a lot of you have been asking me questions about PTSD, what it is, how it impacts the body, and how to break free from it. So let's talk about that today. First of all, PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder, can simply be defined as an event that happens that is traumatic around feelings or visuals or anything that fills the senses. And I know that sounds like a mouthful, but let's take it a little deeper. When a traumatic event occurs, there's physiological changes that actually happen within your brain, causing you to go into fight or flight mode. And with that, it's almost impossible for the mind to decipher what is real, what is not real, what is relevant, what is irrelevant, what is true, and what is not true. So having PTSD is like a narrative to your story, continually stopping and starting, being corrupted by horrible events or mild events that continually happen. So it's like you freeze, or you're constantly taking steps backwards, never able to be fully into a breakthrough place. So let's talk about who can have post-traumatic stress disorder. Well, just about absolutely everyone on the face of this planet has it, and I know that must feel shocking. But think about the trauma in our day and what everything looks like. Fires, floods, volcanoes now, hurricanes. There's a lot of loss that happens with just today's events. Not to mention, 1 in 4 or 5 women continually are raped. And get this, 50% of that statistic is 15 years old and under. I mean, just turning on the television set, we hear of child abductions and child abuse and horrible things that are happening in our world today. So everyone on the face of the planet has lived through something that was traumatic for their lives. So let's talk more about who can hold PTSD and what that looks like in an individual, how an individual actually fragments and compartmentalizes something. First, let's take a baby. Let's take a baby that hasn't even been born yet, that's still in the mother's womb. So a baby in the mother's womb can fragment and pull apart when the mother feels anxiety, heightened fear. Let's say she's driving down the freeway in her car and there's a horrible accident that happens in front of her and she's able to avoid it. That sudden rush of panic and fear can actually impact the unborn child. Now let's take somebody that's a little older, 3 years old. You know, I've worked with a lot of people that have had trauma at 3 years old. This is when the physiological aspect of the brain can understand emotion and can put trauma with an emotion. So a baby that is 3 years old can actually split apart and fragment if the parents get into a heated argument. I know that sounds crazy, but so many people I've worked with have trauma just by that from 3 years old. So let's look at a child that's a little older, maybe 10 to 20 years old. Now there's a lot that happens in our society that's impactful to a child at that age or a young adult. There are arguments that happen, breakups of relationships, divorce happens, bullying is horrible in our society today. Think about bullying that's anonymous over our social media. That kind of bullying where people feel that they can hurt someone or say horrible negative words to someone causes an individual to question their identity. They go into a lot of suicidal tendencies, actually. a lot of hopelessness, despair, depression. So let's talk about somebody that's a little older. Let's say an adult mind. Now the adult mind, it's a little harder to split an adult mind, but you can totally compartmentalize and fragment and pull apart as an adult through a divorce, a loss of a child, a loss of a loved one. Even if it's peaceful passing, there can be a lasting impact with that passing. It's really difficult to navigate our world today, isn't it? So let's talk about the vets on the front line. We all know that a lot of them carry horrific and high PTSD. They come home, they're fragmented, they're expected to be normal, like nothing has happened to them, where they have actually come back through horrific events, visually, sensory, every part of them has been impacted. They go from trying to survive on the front lines to coming back and going to Target and pretending like nothing has happened, being a target on the front lines to walking through Target in the United States. I've heard a lot of vets talk about that. So of course they have high trauma. How could they not? There has been a really interesting article that was posted in Scientific American recently. And they have done studies on Holocaust survivors and their generational downlines. Now, surviving the Holocaust had to be completely traumatic. It had to be an experience that was so impactful that some people still cannot talk about it today. It is that emotional. So they have found that survivors of Holocaust have lowered cortisol levels within their minds, and with that they have a lot more anxiety and fear disorders. Now the physiological change that happens within their brain actually changes their DNA. If you can think about something so traumatic changing the pattern of your DNA, and that change has been passed down to their children. And their children have grown up with lower cortisol levels, and they're experiencing a lot more anxiety disorders. So let's talk about triggers and body memories. Now everybody has good and bad triggers. So a good trigger would be listening to a song on the radio, and it takes you back to good events and good days and fun with friends. Everybody has those amazing good triggers. One of my favorite smells is the smell of the lake cottage up at the lake in Michigan. I love that smell. It takes me back to old good times when I was growing up. Or let's say grandmother's cooking. Or let's say a hug from your dad. You remember that. Or fishing, that sights and sounds, all of those visuals and smells are all good triggers. But you also have bad triggers. Now, a bad trigger can also encompass every part of your emotions, every part of who you are, all of your senses. A bad trigger can be a doorknob shaking. It can be keys shaking. It can be a rotary fan on your ceiling. It can be long white hallways, closed doors, open doors. It can be clothes, attire that a group of people or an individual is wearing. It can be a dog or a cat. And it can even be something that is so familiar to you, but yet causes an impact in your emotional life. So let's talk about body memories. Now, a body memory is something that the mind might not even connect with. A body memory is something that happens within your organs, and it can be really scary if you're not sure what is happening to you. So a body memory can be, let's say there's a trigger of a long white hallway. Maybe your heart becomes rapid, your heartbeat pounds, you feel anxiety, butterflies come up. Maybe you go into a panic attack. You know, I've heard of people that have dissociative disorders, which is all part of this, that are crossing a street, they're around a lot of different people passing very quickly, and they pass out. You could black out. You could not be able to see clearly. Even your vision could be impacted. Body memories are really scary things. You know, I understand PTSD. I've been through a lot of it in my life. I understand body memories. I understand the places that PTSD can throw you in. And I'm asking you to not suffer by yourself, not suffer alone. Please contact me and let's talk about a breakthrough specifically tailored for you today. My website is innerhealinglifecoach.com. Please contact me and let's talk about it. I don't think anybody should have to suffer alone. Thanks for listening today. My name is Lynn Matina. Thanks.